Alright, our audio is live, FYI. My brother just sent me a picture of his cat staring at the screensaver. Yo, if you've got audio on, you want to give me a sound check? Okay. Alright, cool. Audio's good. Thank you, sir. Giving people a little time here to show up. For the love of God. Gonna make this hard. Yeah, gonna make this hard. There we go.
Does the browser just know how to interpret Markdown?
No, when you use the Markdown preview in browser, it generates the HTML as a temp file.
Oh, okay.
It's very handy.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if browsers can just natively handle Markdown,
Right?
that'd be great.
That would be terrific.
I wonder why they don't.
Because Markdown was invented well after everything else.
I mean, so was HTML5. That really didn't stop them.
I mean, you're right. There we go. That breaks. Why does that break?
Hello.
Howdy.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Good, you?
Doing well. They told me something about a comfy couch. I said, oh boy.
That's right.
Is it? I have time quick to go run to the restroom?
Certainly.
All right. It's just the three of us?
And the rest of the internet. But yeah.
All right.
I got to go around recruiting today.
There we go.
Oops.
Well, actively advertising via Teams, and hopefully people will drop into VODs and see what it's about. Get more interested. I have a sneaking suspicion that the interest will be more in like VODs or clips that occur after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
Oh, you saw that message you sent?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's some fucking turning.
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's supposed to be /v space /qn or /v/qn.
Is that for enable?
Hmm?
Is that for enable, or is that just
No,
emphasize?
that's for something in UGN.
I don't understand why /s is in there twice.
Why what? It's elaborating. Slash S lets you pass in and assign parameters, and then for quiet or silent install, use slash S slash
VM.
B slash whatever. The ambiguous thing.
Yeah. Have cookie. Will travel.
I was going to say that too. Have cookie, will travel.
What's that from?
This coach. I don't know. I don't know what the original saying's from.
Have something will travel.
Yeah.
Did I take your spot?
Yeah, it's okay. It's alright.
Nope, there's more comfortable chairs over here.
Alright.
There you go.
Fair enough.
Well, this one has a table.
True.
I like this chair a lot more now. I see why you always sit here, Jeff.
Comfy.
So I didn't catch any other people. Kirk is not able to make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is Bob in the chat? Was he?
He's been in here
Sometimes.
before.
Okay.
Anybody that's interested, even some of the time, we just get him in so that they get periodic reminders. Hey, we're doing a thing on Thursday. Who's coming?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a constant reminder. This is here. You
I
can come
like
to
it.
it.
Yeah,
You're invited.
I pinned it in my teams. I'm like, this is gonna be the one I watch a lot. So Christian told me, first Thursday of the month.
Yep.
Beginner night. I know you guys will go easy on me, but I also am considerate to making it fun for you guys.
Teaching is fun.
I thought, maybe we could start with just some top level stuff.
There's some top level stuff right there.
The experience that I've got is I started something, and I don't know how good or bad this service is, but Code Academy.
Okay.
This was years ago.
Doesn't matter. I did Code Academy
I did it
for
too.
Did you?
JavaScript, and
Okay.
I think they didn't have they had JavaScript, and I don't think they had a CSS one, but I did.
Yeah.
I did it.
And so that's good to know. And so it was like 2014, honestly.
Sure.
So I feel like I've immediately forgotten. But I can tell you, when I was learning it, I really liked it.
Yeah.
So
Do you remember what language you looked up?
Python.
No, we didn't get into Python yet. I was at, I think we were on Java.
JavaScript.
JavaScript.
Okay, good.
And then I think
JavaScript is better.
where I had left off, it was about to get into either some HTML stuff or something CSS related. God, it's been a while,
Sure.
so forgive me. But
No, cool.
It's really easy to learn them all together.
okay, so I just wanted you guys to know that my interest is up there,
Sure.
and I feel confident enough to learn, as long as you guys help me with putting it in a little bit of layman's terms, so that I'm not missing the concept.
Sure.
And of course, I'll learn terminology and things as I go.
So you have sounds like probably JavaScript knowledge. You're familiar with HTML. Okay.
But I couldn't code anything
couldn't
for you
sit
right
down
now.
and write a that's cool.
So I want to be treated like a brand new,
Okay.
in case there's, but keeping it top level in terms of, okay, so this is what, here's some examples of things we use it for here.
Sure.
Here's what I do with my personal projects. Just a kind of a discussion on what you guys think would be maybe helpful. And then I was thinking,
Just get
Whatever
started
you-
and slow us down.
okay,
Yeah.
Slow us down whenever we're going too fast for you.
sounds good to
We'll
me.
get a good feel for where you're at, because that's
You're not going to hurt our feelings if we're going slower.
Okay.
We'll slow to a crawl and help you get through the Swiss cheese knowledge and.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
My first question, I guess, would be, so I hear people talk about software programmers,
Mhm.
and I know people code websites. So, is there an in between where the programming or the languages that are out there kind of mesh together, or
Electron.
Oh God. So so there's plenty of words and terminology that you can trip on. People will throw at you randomly. Good, not related but related example is if somebody in conversation talking about business things suddenly uses the term logo on you,
Mhm.
do you know what that would mean in the term of in business terminology?
No, not necessarily.
Me neither. I have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
Well, turns out that's like customer.
Really?
Yeah, that way, it's more customers that you can put underneath your.
Yeah,
Like some
logos on your
sites will have
webpage.
a list of like, here are our customers, and they'll add logos to that list of
So
customers.
a fair amount of what we end up doing is demystifying terminology. So there's different kinds of programming languages that are good at different kinds of things. You can make most programming languages do most things. It's just generally not a great idea.
Sure.
Okay, so you can throw a car into a lake. You're gonna have varying results depending on how deep the lake is, what it's composed of,
How heavy the car is.
how heavy the car is.
Whether the lake is frozen.
Yeah, there's all So it's like there's lots of variables. So you can write software, well, theoretically, in any language that's been created. That's the whole point of a programming language.
Just to have a compiler or interpreter, but
Yeah.
it's got one of those.
As far as websites, so web programming, generally you will have one of a few different things serving the page to the viewer, the thing doing the request for the web page. Very common is Apache, also Nginx, and there's some others.
Nginx is spelled Nginx.
Yeah.
It's not spelled the way it looks.
Okay.
Right. But you don't program in Apache, and you don't program in Nginx.
Okay.
You write your code in some other language, and then Apache knows how to read it. Like, for example, PHP. Very common, Facebook uses it, etc. You write your code in PHP, and you tell the web server, hey, web server, I'm going to point at a PHP file. And when I do that, I want you to run it through the PHP interpreter.
Okay.
And then what happens is when you spit out some kind of output from your PHP code, it just vomits it out to Apache, and Apache just vomits it out to you.
Okay.
And Apache doesn't know what the hell it's doing. It's just delivering data. And so you establish this chain of request, response.
Yeah.
And whatever does the responding, whatever language that is, it doesn't really matter. It could be JavaScript, it could be PHP, it could be C, or assembly if you're really crazy. Like you want to really get down and talk to the metal. And so that kind of gets into like, what are the different languages? And there, like Christian said, there's basically two camps of languages, compiled and interpreted.
Okay.
And so you may have heard of languages like C or C++, Java.
Yep.
These are all compiled languages. You write code, you smash your keyboard until you're done, and then you tell a program, go turn this into something else that the computer can understand.
Okay.
And it compiles it and puts it through the meat grinder and spits out stuff that you can't understand, I can't understand, maybe Christian can, I doubt it. Yeah. And then the computer knows how to execute that code.
Okay.
And in the case of like a Java, it actually doesn't execute on the hardware. It executes in the JVM, the Java virtual machine. Not a virtual machine like in IT, like we have servers running on,
but kind of not.
Kind of not, yeah. It's a language and runtime that that their bytecode can run on that allows it to run on the hardware. And the advantage that gives Java, not JavaScript, Java, is you can have a Java virtual machine for the computer that's in that cabinet there, is standard x86 64 Intel CPU, right? You can also have one for ARM. You can have one for the weirdo integrated whatever the hell bullshit that's in your car, which means they can run the same Java code in your car.
Interesting. Okay.
So it gives it a lot of portability that like C doesn't have. Okay. You have to target each application platform with C. So like that's why they say C code isn't portable, because you couldn't just go and run it on that specialty thing in your car.
Yeah.
It won't work.
Okay.
Well, uncompiled C can be portable. A compiled C binary is not portable.
Yes, right.
So interpreted would be some of that I'm seeing up there.
JavaScript is interpreted.
Yep.
PHP, Python are interpreted. I mean, JavaScript's going to be the best example of an interpreted language that everyone's going to be familiar with. Excel, if you count that as a programming language, that's interpreted. Excel is the Excel interpreter.
Mm-hmm. So this is Chrome web browser, right?
Okay. Yeah.
This thing that I just opened up at the bottom, I just go right-click, inspect, brings up the developer panel, and this has got all kinds of fun tools in it. I can move this around, I can pop it out and put it somewhere else. We like to use this because the console acts as a raw JavaScript interpreter. So I can actually put code in here and hit enter, and it executes the second I hit enter. So I can do something like hello in quotation marks, and it's going to just...
I remember some of our examples.
Right, it's really kind of creepy.
That is creepy.
I can do 2 plus 2, so that's 4. I know how to evaluate that.
Nice.
But here's where JavaScript goes a little off the fucking rails. 2 plus 2. What?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we're starting to talk about the actual programming, and this is data types. So in the quotes, any text is called a string. And it's called that because it's a stringing together of characters. And so that can be any length you want. It doesn't really matter. All text inside of quotes is a string.
Okay.
Then on the second line, you got 2 plus 2, and this is integer arithmetic. So 2 is an integer, 2 is an integer, creates 4. You get addition. Integer is any whole number,
Including negatives.
including negatives,
Okay.
and 0.
Yep.
So integer versus what, you might say? There's a concept of decimal places in numbers, so like 2.5 is a number. How do we express that? Well, in JavaScript, they call it a number. It's a float. And float being the decimal point can float around inside there with whatever precision you need.
Well, floating point is the longer version of it.
Right.
Okay.
Floating point math.
Right. And floating point math gets a little bit weird, but that's not worth really getting into other than knowing it gets a little weird. But here you can see what we did is we did the same, like ostensibly the same arithmetic, and we did 2 plus quote 2. And so what JavaScript does for us automatically is what they call type casting. It can make one value a different type to satisfy some operation.
Because you can't really add 2 and a word. Like, what is 2 plus orange?
Right.
Yeah, that does not compute.
Yeah. So the best it can do is turn 2 into a string, and then it can combine 2 and orange to make 2 orange.
Yeah, so you
Okay.
get 2 orange.
Because that's the most reasonable interpretation that they could come up with.
Right.
So typecasting is the process of it combining the string and, in that case, the integer.
So that's
It's
basically
the process of turning the integer into a string so that it can combine the two.
right.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Can I do string 4? I cannot. 4 dot string. No.
Is it 2 string or?
4 dot 2 string. No.
Now this is just this panel that you brought up.
Yep.
Is it just Chrome that can do that?
All browsers can do it.
Can they really?
Yep.
You can now.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's not always been a thing, but it's been a thing for like 5 or 6 years at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chrome was the first, right?
Probably.
I think Firefox probably had a developer.
Oh no,
console
Firefox
first.
had Firebug a long time ago.
Yeah, but Chrome
I
made it
was
really,
using-
really easy to get to.
Yeah. I've been using this kind of thing with Firefox, a thing called Firebug, since 2008. So it's been a while.
Okay.
But it's also evolved. It hasn't been, the stagnant thing. One of the things that happened to the internet that was good and bad was JavaScript became very common. And Facebook uses JavaScript a lot in things like chat. You're posting updates. You ever notice, like when you go to Facebook, you go facebook.com, you log in, and then the page, you never like visit a different page. It's always just right here where it is, and it'll like pop elements in and out, but like you never like load a new page.
Right.
It's called a single page web app. So all of the navigation that happens is actually the browser asking the server for give me code related to this other thing, like a group that I care about, or a chat with this person, whatever. And it does an AJAX request, what they call AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML.
Yep.
Does this fetch of data from the server without actually leaving the page you're on, which is kind of cool because then you don't have to leave the page, you don't have to refresh, you don't have to lose all the state that you have. So like right here, this says Google on it, and we got a search box and some icons. We can load data in here without having all this get blown away and redrawn. We can just like bloop, pop it in, and that's what Facebook takes advantage of, which is also why they use JavaScript a lot. And if you let Facebook just sit in an open browser on your Mac or PC for like weeks, it'll eventually crash your browser.
Okay.
It's got memory leaks and stuff, or at least it always has, in my experience. But anyways, getting back to this. So this is an interactive console. It's able to do some interesting things. So like we can say console.log test. Right. And when you have, for example, this console, that's not highlighting very well.
Turn the lights down a little bit. So.
Oh yeah. So console is an object inside of the browser. Don't really need to worry about that too much. It has on it a function called log, and log has parentheses after it, and inside of those, test is my argument I'm passing it. So I can say test, and it'll log to the console test, which is fine. Console.log this is a test.
Without any spaces.
Without any spaces, it's going to look really bad when I print this out because I didn't add any spaces in there.
Okay.
This is a test all run together.
Okay.
There's other things you can do in here. So there's like JavaScript alerts. We just
all right.
got an alert. You can also do things like prompt. What is your age? And then it'll say, give me what is your age?
So who defines those? I don't even know what they would be called.
Those functions?
Those functions.
Yep.
Who does that?
So that was defined probably a long time ago, probably by either Brendan Eich or the Netscape people. And like they just thought, oh, it'd be fun to be able to do this thing and then this thing. And there's probably a bunch of other stuff that's probably been deprecated and just went away because nobody used it. Even those things, alert and prompt, are not used very often.
Okay.
It's just kind of there, actually kind of just for this particular purpose, to learn how to interact
Sure.
and do stuff.
So when the prompt comes up, how does I guess it's the browser then, how does it know what size to make that prompt? I mean, what's stopping it from being a full page? Taking up the full.
Just the way Mozilla designed it.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So Chrome in this case,
Okay.
Mozilla, whoever,
Gotcha.
they have a native control that they pop out.
So when it sees prompt, it's
does
predefined.
that.
This
Yep.
is what we're going to make.
And you can't control the way it looks.
Okay.
You can only control the contents.
Okay. Okay.
Unless you rewrite the browser itself.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So I can also
Not there.
so I don't know if you noticed, but when I typed in 88, hit OK, it spit out the age that I gave it. But I can't do anything with that because it's like there. So what if I wanted to do something with that data? So I'm going to say prompt, and then I'm going to assign it using the equals to the variable I'm calling age. Watch what happens. Hey, Bob.
Have a seat.
Happy birthday, by the way.
99. Hey, thanks.
It's your
Oh,
B-Day?
yeah, happy birthday.
It was on the
A
4th.
couple days ago.
Oh, okay. Happy belated, man.
Thanks. 89. It says 89. Now, I can recall what that prompt gave me, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use the output from prompt to give to alert.
Okay.
I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to say alert. So I'm not telling it what number to say. I already gave it input, saved in a variable, and I'm recalling with that variable And so it's going to replace the word age with my value.
Okay.
There it is. That's incredibly tiny text.
Can you control and scroll and make it bigger? No.
What is this doing, by the way?
Trying to break the internet. No,
It's
Is this-
alerting.
can I not?
Is this Go or is it HTML?
This is JavaScript.
Java. Okay, none of them.
I think that only affects the actual page.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe try again.
Try it.
No.
Yeah, it's just a native control.
No problem.
So it only does that. Well, that's fine.
We'll just change the screen resolution like they did back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. We don't need to worry about that because like we're going to be only playing in here, so it doesn't really matter
Okay.
as long as this is big enough for everybody to see comfortably.
For what it's worth,
Yes, sir.
Humble Bundle has a slew of books on Raspberry Pis.
Oh, do
right
they?
now, yeah. So programming in Python with Raspberry Pis and Linux. And
Sure.
projects that you can do with Pis. I just bought it.
Nice.
I'm like, I'll check it out.
You have Raspberry Pi yet?
Not yet? Nope.
Were the books spendy?
No, it's like
Humble Bundle.
Humble Bundle. You get like 20 books for $15.
Oh wow.
You can get, there's like the first 4 books are only $1. It's like an intro to Pi and
Nice.
Python. So yeah, if you haven't looked at Humble Bundle, check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
So this whole alert and prompt thing is fun, but it's like tedious to type this stuff out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a new function. Function my function. And I'm going to say I want to give it a question to ask.
How particular? So, is this JavaScript that we're using right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
How particular is that language with spacing and things of that nature?
Not very particular at all.
Spacing,
that
not so
space
much.
between-
Capitalization, it's very sensitive.
So function, space between function and my function.
Yep.
It
But it
doesn't
can also
matter.
be
That
8,000
does
space.
matter.
You could have it, but it's
Yeah.
for the
it
human
can't
mind.
be
it's-
0, but it can be 8,000.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to have a space.
At least one space because it's got to tokenize the actual language the code that you've typed out.
Okay.
But it's not beyond just the one space. It doesn't care.
Okay.
The my
You can go up to
function.
8,000.
Yeah.
That's great.
They can go
Is that a
further than that,
name?
but it's like, there's no point.
My function.
Or is that like you're calling it
It's
my
just,
function?
It's just a name.
It's
Yeah.
just a
okay.
name. I can call it whatever I want.
And question is also just a name.
I can call this
Q. Gotcha.
elephant takes argument tiger. And I'm going to say,
So you can recall the function elephant later
yep,
to get the.
data equals prompt. And I'm going to say tiger. And then I'm going to alert data. So whatever it gave me, I'm going to spit back out as an alert.
Okay.
And you'll notice I put semicolons. JavaScript is a language that wants semicolons, but doesn't demand them.
Oh, really? Okay.
And that fact alone is a reason for a lot of weird things in JavaScript. If you don't give it semicolons, it guesses where they should go.
At the end of a line.
So at the end of a line,
At the end of a
usually
statement.
there's no end of line semicolon here.
Right.
So
At
it
the end of a
depends.
statement.
At
It's
the end of
a
a
certain
statement.
kind of line. But a single statement can go across multiple
It's like
lines too.
you put a semicolon between email addresses so it knows where it's ending and where
Depending
the
on
next one
the
begins.
application you're talking about.
Yeah.
Some applications take commas.
Or
And then,
colons or pipe symbols or
Any separator that you care to use.
spaces.
So now I've got this new function called elephants that I created myself. It doesn't exist normally in Chrome. I just created it, and I can call it by going elephants, open parentheses, and now I have to give it the tiger, which I'm going to say is, I don't know, fish, sure. And this is going to make a whole lot of sense, but I'm going to say fish.
Like,
It's going to say fish, right? That's the
Yep.
question I asked. I'm going to say
Yes.
internets. And it prompts internets.
Okay.
Or alerts. And that's that. So that now with one line of code, I was able to achieve all those things.
Okay.
And I can repeat that. So let's repeat it twice because I don't want to do it 1,000 times.
Sure.
So there's a concept in programming called a loop. In JavaScript, as in many languages, it kind of looks like this. So it has basically 3 statements. I'm going to write them out and then I'll explain them.
Okay.
All right. So you see the semicolons?
Mhm.
They separate statements.
Okay.
So the first statement is an initializer. Happens the first time the loop runs. Happens only one time. It initializes the variable I to the value 0.
Okay. What's the FOR?
FOR is
For.
the for loop.
You use it like for each, if you have a list of things.
Oh, okay.
In this case, it's like for each value I as you increment I.
Yeah, so
Then
you would read this
run
for
this.
Okay.
for I equals 0, while I is less than 2, increment I.
Okay.
And you increment I in between doing the block of what comes after this and the curly braces. You could also do it inside the block, but that gets inconsistent. So
Fishing. So I got a little fancy there. I said fishing space I space times. And what it's going to do is it's going to replace the I with the number that I'm on. So the first time it goes through here, it'll say fishing 0 times. And then it'll say fishing 1 times. And then
I plus plus basically means take I and just add 1 to it,
Yeah.
and that's the new I.
it's a shorthand.
Okay.
Instead of saying I plus 1.
Well, it would be I equals I plus 1. It'd be exactly the same thing as I plus plus,
Oh, okay.
but it's such a common operation for things like loops that it just has its own special syntax in most languages.
I
Yeah.
plus plus. Okay.
Or I minus minus, that's the same thing for subtracting 1.
Okay.
And that is such a common syntax that it's part of the joke name of C++.
Is it?
C and C++, which that's the joke.
Because C++
It's
is one better
one
than
better.
C.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah,
Interesting.
That's pretty funny.
programmers are clever, pedantic.
No, they're not.
So I've got this for loop. I haven't hit enter yet.
Dark humor.
They named lame and also gnu and also herd and also wine.
Why the curly brace wrap down there like
Sure.
that? I don't
So it's a
understand
very
that.
common syntax. You'll find we got the same thing on the function.
Is it just
You
like
got a brace and a brace. It defines a block of code.
Makes it easier to read. If I'm
yeah,
not
I
mistaken.
mean, is it just good etiquette, right? It's
You
like
could
No,
have
it's
that
actually
all-
required.
oh, it is.
Yeah.
You could have that all one line.
Yep.
One endless line.
Yeah, in some languages, if it's all in one line, you don't even need the curly braces. You can just define it out in the space.
I think JavaScript is one of them.
Yeah, you could do that with one line of JavaScript.
So how are you? I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No.
how are you going to the next line without prompting it to result? It's now that you
So,
finished that block, then
because-
it will work.
Yeah, because I hadn't finished the block, the JavaScript interpreter that I'm
It's-
typing into knows.
It knows to
You're
go
not
next
done
line.
until you give me the last block.
Okay,
Or the
cool,
last curly.
cool.
So I'm going to hit enter on this curly, and we're going to see it execute, and it's going to ask me for input.
Okay.
And so it says fishing 0 times, ASDF. ASDF. Fishing 1 times. 4.
Okay.
Done. And so you can imagine if you had a legitimate list of things that you cared about, you could loop through them and do something, interact with them, do input or output, whatever, for each of those things.
That's very convenient. Yeah.
So that's most of the power of programming, is doing a loop of some action against lots of things.
Okay.
And sometimes you have loops in loops, and loops in loops in loops, and you can go crazy. What you were talking about these blocks being on the same line or different lines, Python is the one big exception to this goofy syntax. Python doesn't use this block syntax. It uses indentation.
Ah. All right.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
It's
We have a
This-
Python interpreter solved on this, don't we?
We might.
so it's
I'm pretty sure
it's
we do.
basically like a table of contents. It indents down. When it returns, it's the next.
Excuse me.
It's there. You're just not allowed to. Yeah, it's not Linux.
Jerk ass, stupid thing.
That's
I don't think I got sudo on this one either. Hopefully it just works. Burp. Come on. Do what I want, not what I did.
Really? Oh, that's different. I haven't seen it give you a new line of.
Yeah, me neither. There's got to be a ZSH thing. But
Z, a what?
ZSH.
Z shell.
Z
It's,
shell.
it's like Bash, except it's better
Yeah,
at everything.
And that's,
Well, and
Is
yeah, all
that-
shells would argue that.
is that what's running? Is that your,
That's his shell.
oh, the shell in the Windows? Oh,
So it's like the difference between CMD and PowerShell. It's similar to the difference between Z shell and Bash.
Bash, Z shell's better than Bash.
Just objectively, it's not a matter of opinion.
Try this again.
now we're going to PowerShell.
I think it's in C. It just, or
What did I do?
you're already in
Dumbass.
PowerShell.
Typed what I was thinking.
And now you're in two PowerShells.
PowerShell within PowerShell.
Yeah, you can do that. That's legit.
Can you really run PowerShell?
You just did.
Funny.
What the
Thanks,
hell?
Microsoft Store. Look in like the C drive and see if there's a C/PowerShell. Or, yeah, sure.
He said PowerShell.
Yeah, I did say PowerShell. I meant Python.
Yeah.
Can't see.
So
Win key up arrow.
I hear some of our texts talk about PowerShell.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? I mean, forgive me
Another
for being
shell.
ignorant.
It's
I don't even
It's
know.
an application where we
It's-
can run scripts or run things to do stuff.
it
So
is
our-
this command interpreter that he's in right now.
Yeah.
So
So our, like, let's say a service tech, like Don or someone, needs to do something on the back end of a user's computer. They would want to use this if it were the right scenario.
Sometimes.
yeah,
And then-
Sometimes
Would the user know anything visibly on their display?
it depends what they're doing with it.
It depends
Yeah,
upon how we're
it
connecting to
does
it.
depend.
Because we can PowerShell through like enable, and then we can, well, we go into command and enable, and then run PowerShell through command and have it do things.
So is that how we would run a script generally if
One
we
way.
had a solution for something already? Like, oh, we know what to do for this.
it
We're
is
just
an
gonna run this
option. There's
script.
lots of options.
It's one way.
Okay. Okay.
It's a common way.
But
It's,
there's also
it's
things
pretty
that-
powerful.
with Office 365, there's things that you can only do through PowerShell
Oh, really?
or through some other back way in because the GUI doesn't, the graphic interface doesn't give you the tools to be able to change permissions on a calendar for
Whoa.
or certain things, right? So
Good
So
to know.
like, once upon a time, computers were not terribly powerful, and the interface you had was punch cards. And then things got a little better, and they added like the screen concept, and they added a prompt with text you could type in, and this was like a revelation. And like that continued for a little while, and then like the concept of graphical user interface became a big deal, and people latched onto that, and the mouse and the keyboard and all this turned into this like computers are a GUI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, that's only kind of true. The command prompt or terminal or PowerShell or whatever you have is still an option as far as commanding the machine to do stuff.
Okay.
In Linux, it's like a far more frequently used thing. In Windows, most people that use Windows find this terrifying.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of exposure. Like, what
Sure.
can you do? You're not going to run Facebook on this.
Right.
Like, it's a different thing. So most people don't have a whole lot of reason to know how to use command prompt.
Mhm.
But IT admins, programmers, etc., there's a great deal of power because you can script. Anything you can type into this, you can automate.
Okay.
So if you can control the computer using this, you can automatically control the computer using this.
Get the keyboard for a minute.
Yeah, please do.
So you can basically give a list. If you have a list of users you need to do something with,
Sure.
you can write up a
Just
script and then
Post
give it the list and say for each user on this list, do this.
So
actually
this is a
Yes.
commandlet get service. It gives you
send
a
it
list
out
of all the
for
services that are running in the
so that
background.
you just jump into the group and
Stuff
Linux.
like
Mm.
Wi-Fi
There's 8
control
people
stuff, Xbox Live Messenger. I don't know why that's there. All kinds of stuff that runs in the background to make the computer work. And there's a bunch of things that are like
Can you
this.
do like stop service?
Yeah.
Stop dash
You can
service.
add
I
it,
mean,
you
I
can
don't
install
think I have
service, you can delete
permissions to do
service.
it in this session right now, but
Would it be just like
It's just
stop
stop.
dash
yeah, stop service. I mean,
and then you give the service name?
just do get service.
Hello?
You know what?
Question
Services.
for you, Jeff.
Yeah,
This
service.
analogy that we have, what's
So-
the significance of port 1 versus port 4?
Now there's a list.
We have
services.
port 1 that is set to static and port 4 is there
If I
just in
actually type
case
out the right variable name,
something happens.
I call it
'cause we've had
services and not
instances
service.
in which projects or somebody they
doesn't matter
change
if
stuff
it's
and now we can't get into the
running or
device,
stopped.
so this is a way for us.
It's going to display
It'll
everything.
catch
Yeah, it displays all of
PHP
them.
and then we'll
get
get back in.
and you can look at just
port
like the
1 is
first thing in the
primary
list,
Port 1 is the primary,
second thing in the list,
the one we put
third thing in the list.
the gateway off of.
And you can do stuff like pass this into, say, start service. It's not going to start it, I don't think, because I don't have permissions. But if I was the administrator running as an admin, it would let me do that.
Okay.
The pipe symbol, that vertical line, is like to
It just passes the output of the first thing into the second thing.
so you can
Like a pipe.
export it to a list, or you can export it into another command or whatever. That's what
Or I
a
can
pipe is.
like export to CSV. And I don't want to do this in program files. So on the desktop, just to delete that.
No.
I mean, he doesn't look at the desktop ever anyway.
No.
There it is. CSV.
And you can start typing something, you can tab through to get the command if you're not sure what it is, and it'll
Good
scroll
looking
through a
for
list, which is kind of a nice feature.
That is nice.
And this is
Hell.
a CS. Excel will read this and portray it much more nicely.
Which they typically do this, and I'll do stuff like this if I want to find out, like users, so I'll export a list in PowerShell and AD, or Office 365 and get a list of all the users for an account, and then you can get the details like what their emails are, their aliases, when they last logged in, when they last changed their password, when blah blah blah, and have the whole detailed list, which helps clean things up if we need to
You have the mouse?
check for
Yeah.
potential
Sorry.
errors or concerns and things like that.
Yeah, that's nice.
So
There's also an outgrid view that you can just like give it anything and it'll figure out a way to display it in kind of a table. So this is the same list displayed more nicely.
yeah,
Lets you
grid view
filter things like
much nicer than
we only care about agents. Here's enable agent and huntress agent and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
oh, that's nice.
isn't it? If that's
I think they
outdash,
could
good
search
here.
within the outgrid.
Yep.
Or filter.
It adds more
Outgrid.
criteria too.
That was the coolest thing,
Isn't it? I love this thing.
because they showed us that in the training, but then you showed me something, was it Outgrid, or maybe you showed me Outgrid?
I've never seen it
Christian's
before.
knowledge of this
There's
is-
another thing besides
is a
Outgrid, isn't
wonderful
there?
thing.
You must get so bored with just dealing with customers and
I
things.
think I learned more that first few weeks just
Yeah, all of you
working
guys
by
must.
Christian when I was on
We just
212.
get to operate on a little bit higher level and deal with the fleet and all of the customers. There's plenty of complicated problems to solve.
Yeah.
Always.
So
Hey, did you?
there's a pass-through option in Outgrid View where you can
Have a good night, Bob.
you get the same interface
See about
and you can pick one or multiple things out of it
See,
and click OK, and it'll pass
Oh,
that
that's
through to
cool.
the next thing.
all right.
I like
I
it.
taught Brendan a thing.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, like
You
you
never
just
use
used
power.
awk or said.
Yeah. Well, this is a little bit nicer than anything you write in said or awk.
No, false. I mean, it's more interactive.
I mean, nicer in the sense of like this little tiny snippet of code compared to
Sure.
the awk script.
Pipe to awk, print, $1 or 2.
With a bunch of curly brackets and single quotes in various
Mhm.
places in order to make it first. No,
But
it's,
you know,
this is nicer.
this is pretty all right. Except you have to live with all the other sins of PowerShell.
It's only bad for math. It's only really, really bad for math.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really?
It's pretty awful.
We spent way too long trying to solve a simple but recursive mathematical problem, which I guess isn't that simple. But
Was that the one with the clock? The mathematical, recursive mathematical?
That was
different.
a JavaScript math problem.
Okay.
That was me not knowing the difference between arc and radian.
All right.
And I still barely know the difference.
degrees and radians.
Degrees and radians, yes.
There's 360 degrees in a circle, and there are 2 pi radians in
Yes.
a circle. That's the difference.
It's the same,
It's actually not.
just a different representation.
Yeah, but when you call,
It's like watts and horsepower.
yeah. But when you
Like they are measuring the same thing, kind of.
Yeah, it's measuring the arc of a circle, essentially.
yeah, but like if you talk to Canvas API, it talks in radian, not degrees. So if you want to go this far across a circle, like you have to know that in radian.
I mean, you can just like set up a function or
Sure.
constant to multiply by. That's
The problem is you don't know that you have to do that and solve that problem, and then you end up going around your circle 15 times instead of that far.
But you can't tell that you did it 15 times or 1 time or 15,000 times because
Well,
the circles all look the same.
Well,
Yeah.
you know because the output's different than
Well,
what you expect.
What we ended up with, and I don't know if you saw this, when we were doing the Battlestar clock, we should just bring that up and show them.
Oh yeah.
Alan sent me a link to that.
Did he? So you've seen
that
them.
was beautiful. I was like, no way.
They should just be able to type clock. Nope.
There's a carbon. No.
Clock / index.html, I think.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Got smaller.
Yeah. So this was where, oh nice, where we were having the problem. Wanting to draw not a flat line from one point of a second tick to the other point of the second tick. I want to draw this nice smooth arc. So I went like up, over, and then in, and like you saw this movement and this movement, and like I'm expecting them to be right here, and they were just completely in the wrong place. And it took probably an hour of bashing my head into a wall before I realized that I was just talking in the wrong terms. And then it took it like something times pi, and it got happy.
Pi times 2 divided by 60.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
That and
That's pretty awesome, though.
I love this clock.
and this code's a little bit dense for a beginner, but
Yeah.
it's
I can
all in
imagine.
one file, which is really nice. So like the HTML and the JavaScript are all just in one text file.
Except for tween.
Oh yeah, I suppose. But
Yes,
we're not
yes.
using tween.
Are we not?
No.
You sure? Because it loaded it.
I mean, that's because I told it to, but I'm not using it. Because it's in the, right there, source or tween.js, and that's why it's there.
But you're not using the.
But I'm not actually using any of the, yeah.
So what are these? Are these just the corners of the clock? There's a list of vertexes.
I'm not sure what that's for.
Makes a square.
Yeah, which I don't think is even a function I use.
You know,
not
looking
a
at that it makes
function.
a square.
It's a variable. Oh, it is.
It is a function.
Oh, it says square.
Yeah, you're not using it.
There you go. You got code that's not even used.
That happens a lot.
Probably a fair amount of it too. Oh, you know what this probably was? This probably started out as the code for the mildly infuriating screensaver.
Have you seen that, by the way?
I don't think
Pull
so.
it up.
One of the things that is on the desktop. Is it still there?
I don't know.
Where'd it go?
I may have moved it. If you go back to
The page?
nope,
No. Oh, that's that Kirk's
Kirk's
thing.
thing. If you go to just File Explorer or whatever, I think it's in Projects, My Documents Projects, and then mildly infuriating.
Oh no. No.
It's a bit choppy today.
We're
That's 'cause
thinking
we're
it's going
streaming.
right in there.
It will never hit the corner.
Oh.
It'll be off by exactly 1%.
It reminds me of the Office episode where they're all watching the TV
As soon as
behind,
I said that, I was thinking of.
and it's the DVD logo, and it's going around, and they're all like, oh, and he's talking, thinking they're like all reacting to him,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it hits it, they
That
applaud,
cheer.
and they walk out, and he's like, I feel good.
It's a good day. He's all. No.
We could replace this with a DVD logo.
That's true.
Nice little
That'd
call.
be an upgrade.
That would be hilarious.
Future request.
Mm-hmm.
Feature's not yet implemented.
Let me change the icon that moves around.
So that clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was on. What was the address for that? What was it again?
It was local.
Carbon. So I don't understand that, and I know that isn't necessarily related
Sure.
to what you've been teaching me.
So
today,
how is it
but-
at that address?
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, you could just create the address because you own that.
So we own the
Domain.
domain.
Yep.
And we pointed the A record for Carbon
It's a
from
DNS
our
record.
mytech.com to my server, which is in Amazon.
Okay.
And then I've got on that server Apache running. And Apache knows that there's a path on the file system that is the root for the documents.
Okay.
And inside that folder, I've got a folder called clock. And inside of that folder, I've got a bunch of stuff, including index.html.
Okay.
And so when you pull up that web URL, it knows how to talk to the Apache,
Pulls that
and
index file.
Apache goes and gets it and sends it to you.
And then what about like those colors? Is that something that's just in the language?
That's all defined in JavaScript.
Really?
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, that got
Are those fairly accurate to the colors from the show?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even
We
sure
just
where we
called
pulled
the
that from.
BSG clock because it's
inspired by
inspired by it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty
That's
cool.
why you
Yeah,
call it- that's
Alan
why you
had
called
a-
it that.
Alan told me about it. I'm like, you got to send me that.
Yeah, he had an iPhone app that basically did exactly this,
Oh, really?
but it like fell off the App Store for some reason, and
Oh,
so he's like, challenge you guys to build this.
man.
That's pretty neat.
That is cool.
carbon.mytech.com/clock
/index.html.
I was looking for where the actual HTTP requests are. I don't remember where those
For this
were.
guy, there are none.
There you go.
It loads and it's done.
There you
Well,
go.
no, I'm not talking
Take a
about
look.
AJAX requests.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
talking about like
Oh,
to see what the actual
Yeah, that's
HTTP
awesome.
request looks like. To see what the web server is
You
getting.
just have to go preserve log and
it's
then
really
refresh.
good, isn't it? That's pretty cool.
And yeah, there you go.
So for a beginner,
So where is it?
is JavaScript where I'd want to start?
Yeah,
Just to
it's a
have-
good starting point.
It's a good place.
The nice thing about programming languages is like once you understand one, transitioning to others is very straightforward because the concepts generally translate. You just have to learn different syntax and grammar.
Sure.
There might be some different types, like they might have 4 different types of numbers instead of 2.
Right.
Like this one has integers and floats, but they
Technically,
might
it
have
doesn't.
like different lengths of floats, different lengths of integers.
They're all numbers technically
Okay.
in JavaScript, which are all floats.
So there's not even
Oh,
2 types of
really?
numbers, it's only one.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
and that also makes math in JavaScript really strange.
And also infinity is a number.
Yeah,
Seriously?
and not a number is.
In
not a
JavaScript
number.
it is.
Boy,
Yeah, so
that's
And
interesting.
there's big differences. So like if you go to from JavaScript to like my favorite language is Go, big difference. JavaScript is interpreted. Yeah, 1 plus infinity is still infinity. Right. But you go to so JavaScript, like we said, we have been. You can kind of be fast and loose with JavaScript, which is kind of nice. It lets you just kind of prototype and mess around, and like nothing's a big deal.
Okay.
But it also means it's not terribly clean.
Yeah.
So you can kind of piss all over your own workspace, as it were.
So is Go not an interpreted?
Go is not. Go is compiled.
I'm going to hand this to you and you can show off
Sure,
Go.
that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be.
Sit back here.
Yeah.
I gotta get going to rehearsal.
All right, Jeff.
Have
Have
fun.
a good night.
See you guys later.
See ya.
Yep.
A little easier to see when you're sitting there, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's your bigger over there?
So, some basics. So, JavaScript is loosely typed. So there's like this type inference. Like you can combine a number with the string, and it'll do the thing, and it'll print something, right? In Go, that is completely forbidden. You can't do it. It's impossible. The program explodes, and the universe dies.
Okay.
It's not okay.
Or at least the program gets deallocated.
Yeah, it would just bad things happen. So I'm gonna just run this little. This is gonna just say hello playground, and I'll show you what these mean. So it ran, and I'll put that. So fumped matches this, short for format, and it has so that's a package in Go,
Okay.
and it has a function called println for print line, and then it takes argument just like you saw in JavaScript. String inside of parentheses.
Yeah.
So there's some similarities. I mean, Go also has for,
Understanding what a string is would help you understand how to learn to program in Go.
Right.
Okay.
I
like
so
that.
for loops also exist just like they do in JavaScript. There's a bunch of other types of loops that don't exist in Go. Go's just got the one. Go also has var num is an int, var words is a string, and if I go funct.println, num is so I'll show you what I'm doing here in just a second.
Okay.
Should be printf, right?
Yeah. We can do the same kind of concatenation that you saw, where you took a string plus another string, you smush them together with a plus sign. You can do the same thing here, but if you want to have an integer and a string output to the console like this, you want to use like a printf statement, which takes a formatting directive. Formatting directive is a string with these special tokens in it.
Yeah, what are those?
And those get replaced. So like one at a time, the first one gets replaced by the first argument. Second one gets replaced with the second argument. All right. So if I say num equals 10, words equals stuff, and run this, num is 10, words are stuff. So we're using num and words inside of this text.
So why D and why S?
So D and S are special token modifiers. D is for digit. Think just digit. S is for string.
Okay.
And there's others like.
And that's just part of the way Go is, right?
Just part of the way Go is.
Okay.
And and it's specific actually to the printf function inside of the FUMPT package.
Okay.
But there's also like floating point numbers in Go are a different type of number. So I can say var my float is a float, and you have to specify 64 or 32-bit, and then you say my float is 12.77, whatever. And then I can put that in here as well, but I can actually use the format specifier, my float. So the format specifier for a float is, guess it, F, not D,
Okay.
because it has to be used differently. But you can also specify the precision of the float.
Nice.
So I can run that and it'll drop to 12.8 instead of 12.77.
Sure.
So it's rounding. So there, and you cannot say, you can't do this, you can't go num equals my float. If I try to run this, I cannot use my float type, float64, as type int in assignment.
They're the wrong kinds of numbers.
Wrong kinds.
Okay.
So if I wanted to do that, I'd have to say int, and then it's going to chop off the stuff after the decimal, and instead of getting num as 10, we're going to get num as 12.
I like it.
It is an important difference because they're not represented the same for the machine.
Mhm.
Like the way an integer is represented is just like the simple way people learn binary, where it's mostly like the number 0 is just zeros all the way across. Number 1 is like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. 2 is 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, and just kind of counts up like that.
Yeah.
Whereas floating points, like they're stored as like a base number and an exponent, but in binary, so not in base 10. And there's like special hardware to work with those and make them actually perform mathematical operations correctly. But you can't just like, the number 0 in one of them is not the same as the number 0 in the other.
Okay.
Number 10 in one is not the same as 10 in the other.
Yeah.
So it's important that the computer can tell those things completely apart, and you can't confuse them unless it knows specifically, I have to do these operations to turn this floating point of 10.1 into an integer of 10, because they're just not at all the same.
Okay. And so this is your favorite
Yeah.
because of the structure like that? I mean, is
Yes,
that,
it's
that's how you
strongly
prefer
typed.
it? Okay.
So that means that if you make a mistake, before you even get a chance to run the code, you have to compile it, and the compiler catches a bunch of these errors. And you can't
Nice.
have like a variable just dangling in the breeze unused. It says unused variable. Use it, get rid of it, but you got to do something.
Nice.
So it also has this is one of my favorite things. This format. So there's a program written in Go for Go programs called FUMPT. So Go FUMPT, which fixes your formatting. Go introduced the whole concept of this is the style. Here's the program to fix your program so it matches the style. So all you have to do now is integrate this into your development environment, whatever that might be.
Sure.
And whenever you save, it fixes your code.
Okay.
Also a really nice sanity check because it will eliminate extra spaces, and then if you go format, it eliminates them. But if like, say you do this, and then I say string str colon equals that, and then I say str equals bin, obviously not an okay assignment.
Yeah.
I go format. Oh, well, it worked. Well, it's not going to run. So generally, it won't even allow you to format. It won't format because it tries to run it, and it'll die.
Okay.
So it just keeps you in the rails, which is nice because especially when programs get large, it's easy to get lost and
to accidentally delete a curly brace somewhere, and then you never actually exit that loop that you thought you were in.
Right. Exactly.
It gets messy.
And
And
you're looking for it like.
Right. And so, like, trudging through your code for hours looking for a missing semicolon isn't fun.
Yeah.
So PHP is another language that uses semicolons, just like JavaScript. JavaScript allows you to omit them, but then puts them in without your knowledge later. PHP doesn't try to do that. If you don't add it, it just explodes.
Okay.
And it explodes with a very unhelpful message. Something about the code prior to the problem exploded. We're not sure what it is. And so you can't really find it.
That's
So-
not helpful at all, yeah.
Yeah. Programming languages are built very differently and have different tooling around them that allow you to
Solve different problems
different
more or
problems.
less efficiently.
So, like, for example, it says here, Go, prog.go, which is what we're looking at here, line 11, which, there it is, line 11, column 6, so it gets really specific, cannot use bin, which is a type slice of byte, as type string in assignment. So it's saying this is a string, you can't assign slice of byte to a string. They're different things.
A slice is basically a list.
Okay.
It's a kind of a list.
Go is a very interesting language for a variety of reasons. It's compiled, which generally means it's fast. Languages that are interpreted are generally slow. And we're talking like hundreds of times faster than like Python. But not necessarily as fast as other compiled languages like C. C is quite fast. But Go has a lot of good tooling around it that allows you to cross-compile. So you can actually, on this computer, I think I've got some Go code here.
Before you get to that, I'm just thinking, do we know to set the new alarm when we leave?
Is Gerald still here?
We should
I don't
maybe
know.
ask
Go find
him,
Gerald.
because that would be, I
Yeah.
forgot to ask when I first came in.
Somebody would have come by and said, hey, you guys are,
Yeah,
but
but at the same time, if we are the last ones here for whatever
It's a
reason,
good point.
I don't want us to be setting off the alarm. Like, hey, Sarah.
Right.
This is great, man, and I really appreciate the explanations.
You
You're
bet.
a great teacher.
Thanks. Why is this not working? Oh, because I'm on desktop.
So I don't even know what you do for Mytech. What do you do?
I write software, various tools.
Like the tools we put on our clients'
Some of them.
workstations
So
you've
if
been involved in?
if you've ever heard of Cog, I built that.
I don't know if I have. Probably not.
It's basically our tool management tool. So one of the first things Cog was assigned to do was we have Enable, right?
Yeah.
And the agent has to be installed in order for the computer to show up. If you've never installed Enable generally installs okay, but it's like a 5 to 15 minute process. You may have to install .NET and then install Enable, and it's like a lot of futzing around. You got to download the agent. The agent's not tiny; it's like 50 or 60 megs, you know.
Really?
And it's not automatic. You have to like tell it exactly what, like, customer ID and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's involved. So what I wanted to do was have a thing exist on the computers that could automatically install Enable automatically for the right customer without us lifting a finger.
Okay.
And on top of that, if Enable decides to go sideways, go and fix it. You know, kick the service or
Nice.
reinstall it. Another nice feature is when Enable it gets upgraded, Enable can manage its own upgrades, but it's quite slow. It'll take days, sometimes weeks.
Wow.
So Cog can update all of the Enable agents in like a couple hours.
That's nice.
It can do it faster, but it's
Sure.
there's a lot of agents out there. It's a big bandwidth draw. So there's some other stuff that it does, but basically it's like a fleet management tool.
Okay.
Um,
So that's the kind of stuff you do for us.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Um,
What was the word? Is he still here?
the alarm hasn't changed yet.
Oh. We're still on the old system?
We have new badges, we don't have new alarm.
Oh.
So the
Okay.
alarm is still set the other way.
Okay, cool. Well, there's peace of mind.
And Belva's still here, so.
You may have seen this too. Why is this throwing a thing? Oh, because I secured it.
Should rethink your password strategy at some point.
Sure. Yeah, probably should. So,
I have not seen this.
this is a visual representation of COG in action. And what you're looking at is each one of the blue dots is a workstation, each one of the green dots is a server. And right around this line, you see they tend to go back to the top, but they don't always. That's about the minute mark. And then basically they go up here when they check in, and then they drop until they check in again, and they might drop to the bottom.
Okay.
So this is just a representation of like what's alive right now. So 4,800 agents are alive right now. And
7571 was the high water mark?
for this, yeah, since this morning, I think.
So the green are what again?
Servers.
Oh, wow. This is beautiful, honestly. This is cool.
And there's some extra razzle
Don't
dazzle.
show it too much because it's being recorded and everything.
Yeah. Some extra razzle dazzle
We're
here.
recording the session.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I wanted to be able to make some
wow.
infographics using the actual agents themselves as the pixels for the infographics.
Sure.
So this is like the start to that, and then they resume their position. So yeah, this is like you may have seen. I mean, there's what's that thing called? It's a live view of attacks going on.
Oh, the Internet Storm Center thing?
Yeah, Internet Storm Center. So there's like this world grid, and you see like things moving between things, and like it's the live
Mostly
attacks,
BS.
and it's bullshit. This, on the other hand, when you see one of these dots go to the top, the moment this thing starts moving is about 50 milliseconds from what actually communicated with the server, give or take.
Okay.
So it's very much real time.
Yeah.
And that, like, so what? What's the benefit of that? Well, if I'm doing some development and I add a feature to the server that makes a server scale less well, we will see that show up as bands of darkness as the check-ins begin failing.
Okay.
And you can see interactively, like the server's chugging, and you get like, it's very visual. And I mean, if you think about it, like 5,000 pieces of communication coming down from the server every minute. It's like, it's a lot of data. It ends up actually being, I've got it condensed pretty good. It's over a period of a day. Each display running this is around 8 to 10 megabytes worth of data over a day.
Okay.
Because I've got it all compressed and what have you. But this is another, like, this is built with the same technology as the screensaver and the clock. It's all just JavaScript
Yeah.
and a canvas, and we're just drawing on it. And the big difference is this is hooked up using a WebSocket to the COG server, and it's the COG server streaming updates to this thing, which is then
That's that 50 millisecond
Yep.
latency.
Yep.
This is reading it. This is showing us 50 milliseconds approximately
right.
after all.
Exactly.
Wow. That is beautiful. That is awesome.
It demos well.
Very,
And
very cool.
we can click on each one of these dots and it'll bring up actual customer information, so that's why we're not going to do that right now.
Yeah.
But this is supposed to be sort of an interrogation dashboard for us to see, like, what's that thing. We can also search for endpoints. We can search by customer. We can actually change the colorization mode to colorize by manufacturer, by model,
wow.
by whether Enable's installed or not.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
That's very handy. Wow.
Yeah, it's neat. It's mostly glitzy, but it has some purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I made a version that is even more glitch and even less purpose. And
Is
even
that-
less working.
Is it just snow?
I think it's snow. It's Try snow-beta.html. It's not PHP.
Nailed it.
Oh, this computer is chugging. Look, it's trying so hard.
Same data.
If you look at
It's
it on a
just-
modern computer, it goes smoother.
It's just replicating a snowfall. kind of thing.
Yeah, basically,
It's in 3D though.
It's actually in 3D space,
That is pretty cool.
but it's real tough on this guy right now.
Yeah.
This is not a fast computer.
Wow. Do you guys do anything with these sessions after you record them, or
This
Does
will
Mytech
actually be the
require us?
first one that's been recorded.
oh, awesome.
So we actually streamed the last one, but I forgot to check a checkbox, and so I didn't save it.
Oh no. All right.
So
Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah. So going back, the point I was making about I made a point about Java being able to run. You can write the code once and run it in multiple places, right? In multiple architectures, different platforms. So Go kind of has a similar thing, except the way Go does it is they can cross-compile to native to each platform. And so I can write Go code on, like I do right now, I write the code on my Mac. I actually run the COG server on a Linux box, and I run the COG agent on Windows boxes.
Okay.
But I also have a COG agent for Linux, and a COG agent for the Mac, and a COG agent for Linux on ARM, and I can do Windows on ARM and whatever, and I don't have to change the code. I can
Okay.
just cross-compile and target a different architecture, which is really neat.
That is cool.
And I don't know that that's unique to Go, but it's very easy to do with Go.
Okay.
You have to mess with build systems to do it for other platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas, I mean, it's kind of hilarious how easy it is to do on Go. Documents, projects.
You're on desktop. Oh, okay, yeah. You might use it backwards.
Yep. So, LRDR. So these are Hello World.exe. It's obviously a Hello World that we made for Windows. And you can see the number of bytes that is. And there's another one. I don't know what that's for,
Probably the Linux version
probably. But I can go build.
or the Darwin
I
version.
actually want to go.
Because we have a Darwin.
Go OS equals Darwin. Go Arch equals AMD 64. Go build.
That's a PowerShellism. I think you have to set those in the environment separately.
Oh, alright. Stupid PowerShell.
Right?
Yeah,
Ruining everything that you're used to doing in Bash
yeah.
or CSH, which is better
Or
objectively
yeah,
in every way.
literally only breaks in Windows.
I mean, that syntax is kind of a Unixism.
Sure. Yeah, so anyways, the point being, it's possible to do that thing and target different operating systems. So, and the other cool part of that is like the COG agent is only 12 megabytes, and that is statically compiled. It doesn't have any external dependencies, and it's just one exe. You drop it on any box, and it'll run.
The alternative to statically compiled is dynamically compiled, where you link with dynamic libraries like DLL files. You've seen those?
I
Which
don't think so, no.
they're just files that have a bunch of code in them, but you can't just double click on it and run it because there's an exe running that knows that it has to access some stuff that's in that DLL, and it
Okay.
uses that code when it's running.
Okay.
Unless you swap out chunks of programs and just reuse them
And so
across multiple programs.
For example, you can't just install Enable.
Mhm.
You have to install .NET 3.5 at minimum, I think, or maybe it's 4.7.
4.6.
Yeah. So, like, if you install Enable without doing that, it will fail. It won't work. You have to install that first.
It has
Whereas,
a bunch of libraries inside that also.
right. So what we've done is kind of a point of optimization here is when we build a machine in the depot, they drop the COG agent on it, and if the machine is already noted in our ticketing system with the serial number, COG knows, here's a serial number, it belongs to this customer, and then we've got a set of default promises for that customer. And maybe we install Enable, maybe we install AV, maybe we install other, the various tools,
Sure.
and it just goes and starts dropping them in.
Nice.
They don't have to touch anything.
Nice.
So here you have,
That is awesome.
this is the enable agent.
Okay.
It's an exe.
Mhm.
but there's also a bunch of DLLs here. And the enable agent, when it's running, will use some of the code that's in these DLLs. It's compiled already, it's just doesn't have a starting point, basically, is what it's missing. But some of this stuff is also going to be used by this exe and this exe and this exe. So instead of putting it in multiple executables, multiple programs, multiple starting points, you define it once in the DLL, and then you don't have to redefine that part again.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
And Go by being static doesn't have any dependencies on these extra libraries. So it's just one binary, and that's the complete program, everything the program needs to run.
So to uninstall a program, you delete the one file. That's it.
Nice. That is cool.
This is back to you.
Excuse me.
So yeah, there's some pretty big fundamental differences between the different languages, but they have their similarities. So like I said, you saw the for loop in JavaScript. Same thing exists here, and do whatever you want inside of here. And this actually comes in two flavors in Go. One is the whole I0 I less than 2 I plus plus do a thing. And this is a comment. I don't know if we even touched on comments. This won't actually execute anything. It's just there for your benefit to understand. And you can just, comment away.
You can comment anywhere. Okay.
And then there's another version of this for loop. Key range things. And then you'd have some value things, which is going to be an array, like a list, or a map. And I'll explain the difference. So my map string int. So it's common map type. So my map stuff is a string equals 10. It's a valid entry in a map. So if this was my map, my keyboard just died. .com. Hello.
Oh, that's not your keyboard
boy.
that died. That's Sublime.
Sublime.
How did you manage to kill Sublime?
I still blame the keyboard somehow.
That's plausible. That's still plausible.
There we go.
Also, you might notice that in JavaScript they only use equal signs, and this has colon equal signs.
Right.
Um,
So in JavaScript, we also didn't do a lot of this var my variable height, right? We just said my variable equals 10, and you don't have to initialize it. Go is statically typed, strongly typed, so you have to declare your variable before you may use your variable.
Okay.
There's a shortcut to that though, and that is called colon equals, where you're going to instantiate a variable and then assign a value to it.
Okay.
So for this example with my map, you can have a map which consists of a key and a value, and the key does not have to be a string. The value does not have to be an integer. Okay. You can have string to string, or a variety of other permutations. You can have a string to map of string to string. You can get all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah. So a key and a value is
right.
the other thing that you said?
Okay. Yeah, it's like a dictionary where the key is the word, and you look it up in a list, and you find the definition of epiphany right next to the key. The key is epiphany, the value is a definition of epiphany.
Okay.
It's kind of like a dictionary like that.
And so that's what we're talking about when we range over a map, is the key and the value.
So for each word in the dictionary, you're going to go through this for loop one time, the way the for loop is set up now.
Right. The other thing you might range over is our my list. That's going to be a slice of string. And then we might have my list, dog. And now that my list contains a single entry that is dog at index 0.
Okay. And that is, those brackets are slicing? That's the slice?
This is, in Go parlance, it's known as a slice.
Okay.
There's also the term array is used very often. This is different in Go specifically. This is different from an array because with a slice we can permute that. We can mutate that slice and do stuff. And I can say of a slice, give me half of the slice, or give me all but the first element of the slice.
Okay.
An array is only different from this in that it has a length,
Okay.
and it cannot not have a length,
And the length cannot change.
and the length cannot change.
It's not if you're calling it the same thing.
Right.
You call it something different and only get part of it, but
Yeah. So my recommendation, if you're looking to continue to expand your mind along these lines, is probably continue to look at JavaScript.
Yeah, absolutely.
you should bring up the fiddle,
The fiddle of
JS fiddle.
yeah.
What were you going to say, though? Look at JavaScript and...
I personally tell people to go and look at. Yeah, thanks.
So what happened
I'll
with...
do that.
When I started with the Code Academy stuff, people were very excited about HTML5. Does
Sure.
anyone even commonly use it?
Yes. So the stuff that you saw, the screensaver, the clock, and rain, were all HTML5.
Okay.
Not possible without it.
Okay.
The part of HTML5 that they use is the canvas element. But really, that's about it. There's other parts of HTML5 that are interesting, but canvas really opened the door. There's some audio API stuff, but that's really pretty much it. Like, it's a lot of JavaScript and manipulating the page using JavaScript.
Ah, here we go.
Oh, okay.
It's .net.
So JS
.com might actually be malicious.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob Root.
Yeah.
You saved us. Maybe.
So this is a nice, fun little tool to play around with, like, raw ideas, and you just you got the HTML top left.
So
CS.
this HTML, this JavaScript, and this CSS make this section of the window down here. So this defines the way this is displayed. This is literally all the code that it takes to define the elements that you see over here. So like the word hello world, here it is over here. Change color, the button, there it is over here. This just changes how it's displayed, but this makes it actually do things. So what this says is, first it defines the banner, which is this thing, and the button, which is where it says change color. And it says when you click on the button, you do this, which adds a class alt to the banner, and that applies these alternative styles to it, which makes it change its color and position and everything like that.
Yeah, so this is a good example of
That's cool, yeah.
of like how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript work together to create some sort of presentation and user experience.
Okay.
So like wrapping your head around like how this all does what it does is a good starting point.
Okay.
There's a lot of concepts at play here, but like this is how they all gel, and it's a very good simple example.
Yeah, and if you can wrap your head around everything that's in this, you're 80% of the way to being a decent web programmer. You have to learn some more stuff like Ajax and But
so then, would all of that be in one file if it were?
It could be.
It could be.
Doesn't have to be.
It could not be, because you can import CSS files separately. Actually, I think that was done on one of these.
Now this one probably not.
So you could have
you imported tween.js.
you could have multiple files and call up those files.
So the HTML is the first file to get downloaded, and that's like the base page, and then it'll have resources like links to You can
You
see
see
there.
this has a script, and it gives you the source.
Okay.
This is a reference to where to find the file to download.
Okay.
So the browser knows that, okay, I have this HTML. It says I need to go and get this in order to fully render the HTML, so I'm going to go and get this JavaScript file.
Yeah.
But you can just copy the contents of the JavaScript file and paste it right into the page.
Mhm.
It'll do the same thing. It just won't be making 2 requests, it'll be making 1 request.
And your big page becomes full of other garbage that you may not care to see all the time.
Right.
And a lot of times, if this doesn't change very much, you can just store that file once in the browser, it'll get cached, and it won't ask for it again
Okay.
for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be defined like outside of this.
I think a very important thing for anybody that's interested in wrapping their head around programming is have some kind of project you want to do. Even if it's something you know has been done 1,000 times, like a calculator is a really good example. Everybody's done a calculator.
Sure.
But the reason everybody's done a calculator is because you know what a working calculator looks like.
Yeah.
It's well defined. You got to go build one now.
Okay.
And then make a calculator. Make one in HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And if you can make a functional calculator, you will have understood that process. And like that's going to put together a lot of components that you can then understand how to make something from scratch.
Yeah.
And that's a leap a lot of people have a hard time making.
If you are at all mathematically minded, this is also a fun site, Project Euler or Euler. The correct pronunciation does not match the way it's spelled. But it just gives you a bunch of little puzzles and an example of, like, if you list all these numbers below 10, we get this, and the sum is 23. Do this, but for 1,000 instead of 10. And this is the kind of problem that's like really easy to solve if you have a computer.
Yeah.
It's not really easy to solve if you have a pencil and a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
it's a bunch of puzzles like this that they don't take very long to solve with a computer. They're fun programming exercises, and you can do them all pretty much in this if you're inclined to do that.
Sure.
So
That's very cool. Very fun.
it's good if you're like mathematically inclined though, because some of these
Sure.
are real thinking problems.
Yeah.
Not so much programming problems as
Yeah,
thinking
no.
problems.
What are some other starting points you'd recommend? Any other sites I would have access to, tools I would have access to?
Code Academy is really good.
Okay.
When you get into the more advanced, like once you understand all the base components of a language, I think picking out little projects to do, even if they're just kind of bullshit, just have something in mind you want to achieve. Copying other people's projects or their ideas is a great way because like you have a predefined design.
Mm-hmm.
One of the hardest things to do is like I see a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to make a video game," and like what people don't understand is like video game is a pretty wide breadth of things that it could be. Like, are you making a flight sim, or are you making a text adventure, or are you making, a snake? Like
Right.
what is it you're trying to build? Or are you trying to make an RPG? A lot of people want to make an RPG, and they don't realize that there's a lot of writing and world building that goes into that has nothing to do with programming. So like they get kind of demoralized because they realize there's a reason AAA shops spend millions of dollars on video game production. Like it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always my idea of programming too. I didn't know that there was any other option, so I didn't actually get into programming until about 2008. And it was about 2011 or 2012 when I kind of realized I could start making like tools. And I started writing scripts, and that's how I started getting going and just automating little things and helping people write their scripts to automate little things. And then I ended up bootstrapping into like, I want to build something big.
Yeah.
And so I started to work on like COG back in 2014, I think, something like that.
Excuse
I
me.
wasn't.
Yeah.
You spoke earlier about something that I didn't fully understand, and you talked about speaking to the metal. I think is how you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking hardware when you
Yep.
say that.
Yep.
Would that come into play when you're talking about when you're working with something like I went to school for audio engineering, right? And they use Avid Pro Tools and things of that nature
Mhm.
that have interfaces, audio interfaces that are external. Um, they basically end up being the processing power for the computer, right? Um, is that someone who programs something like that? I mean, they're going to use what you're talking about when it came to that depth of different
Sure.
way to talk to the hardware itself. Is
Right.
that kind of what you meant by speaking
Very
to the-
likely, yes. You'll find in high performance applications like that, like video processing or audio processing, there are high throughput activities that you don't want any glitching, any stopping.
Right.
And so you don't want, so for example, Go would be maybe not the best language to write an audio processor in because Go has garbage collection, which means they manage your memory for you.
Okay.
So if you say, I've got a variable X and later I don't use it anymore, Go will clean it up. You don't have to deallocate that. A language like C is not garbage collected. If you don't throw it away, it doesn't get thrown away.
Okay.
And then you leak memory. But like you can manage your memory and be very precise about when certain activities occur and like not interrupting like the main thread of throughput. So like your audio samples keep flowing and they don't get interrupted by anything.
Okay.
And so you want that kind of real time thing.
Yeah.
That matters a lot. So it may not even be a matter of being CPU intensive necessarily, but like not stopping it.
Yeah.
You know, a medium amount of work all the time.
Okay.
Right? So like a real time kind of thing. Lots of software doesn't have that requirement, and so there's Python's fine for doing this and that, but maybe not for audio or video editing.
Sure.
That kind of stuff. Real time applications also include like car interfaces and aviation. You don't want a garbage collected language keeping your airplane from flying.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, having a conversation with the metal, as it were, is the program speaking in such a way that it's directly altering the state of the CPU's execution, rather than having some level of high-level code in Java that is compiled down to bytecode, which is run on a JVM, which may or may not be scheduled on the CPU by Windows. Like, there's just so many ways that could fail.
Okay.
And it may result in no skipping, but it totally could. And I'm sure you've seen Windows do stuff and like little spinning thing and like, what the hell are you doing, Windows? Just do the thing.
Sure.
And that's Windows. Some part of that stack of shit fell apart for a minute, and then it's working again.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you for explaining.
You bet.
How do you guys feel? Feel like that's a solid point to get me started? I think you guys are showing me plenty so far.
I think this is the best place to start.
Yeah,
because
right here.
You can make a GUI and make it like, I made a couple changes to this so that it lets you click on this multiple times and it goes back.
Nice. I noticed that you tried it again and it didn't.
Added this line, these 3 lines here, and these 2 lines here.
Okay.
So the slippery slope
Can probably make that.
of web development.
There we go, a little bigger.
And the reason I kind of flip-flop myself between telling people to learn JavaScript versus like learning Go. When you learn Go, you're learning one language, one set of tools. It doesn't have a UI. It's all command line stuff. It can do other things, but fundamentally that's all it does. And you can achieve a lot with that. And like, for example, we can take data from our ticketing system and go have a conversation with Amazon and say, what is the sentiment of this piece of text? And we can get that data and we can put it in a database and we can graph it all with Go. You don't need any user interface.
Yeah.
But this kind of stuff, it allows you to, kind of see and touch and taste it a little bit. But the tricky part here is you're not learning one language. You're learning like 1, 2, 3. You're learning a framework called jQuery. So, like, technically, those kind of 4 languages you're learning simultaneously. And your brain, your mental model of how the world works doesn't exist yet because you just started. And so, if you change that thing over there, does it affect that thing over there? It probably doesn't, but what if it does? What are the side effects? And so this is where it gets maddening.
But it is really easy to test all those things because it's an interpreted language. It's interpreted right in front of you.
Right.
Like, it doesn't run this function until I click on it. So I can change the function. I can change these.
Do you have a console in here? I don't remember.
I mean,
you can pull up.
I can make one. But,
yeah.
But like, you can just see what it does. You can mess with everything. What happens if I just delete this whole section here? Let's find out. I run it. That looks a little bit different. Still does a thing. Doesn't do the same thing.
Right.
Just put it back because now we know that's important.
Yeah, of course.
Well, what is FFF? Let's say that we just make it F00.
Just the background color, yeah.
Yep.
So what is the, what's the exclamation on line 13 there? What is that?
That's a not. So alt is a boolean, which means it is true or false, on or off. Most languages use true and false. I'm defining it as false because there's a class called alt that's being added and removed.
Okay.
I just want to keep track of whether that has been added or not. So I made a variable. We store that information there. We write to it at the end, but we started off with false because the first thing that we do is add it. And then if it has already been added, we remove it. If it has not been added, then we add it.
Okay.
But whatever it was before, it's not going to be that at the end. So
Okay.
we have to, if it was true, this returns false. This makes the true into a false and the false into a true.
Okay. And that's those are what you alter to allow that to multiple times you can interact with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
and,
awesome.
and the not is like Boolean inversion. Not, it doesn't just negate. It can also negate. So it can make a negative into a positive,
Really?
as well as a positive into a negative.
Okay. That's awesome. And then, Bob talked about Humble Bundle.
Yeah.
Is that a good source for books? I mean, are there any books that...
They're going to be a little bit much cheaper than usual. I mean,
Yeah.
quality of the
Are
books
there
is
any
going to
that
be...
that come to mind that you like? You
They
definitely could trust this, but...
I mean, I've read a couple of different books. Like way back when I was doing PHP stuff, I got there's this programming the web with PHP and MySQL, and like it walked through an entire web project, how to build stuff. But there's sort of an unfortunate like knock-on side effect of reading a book. You're going to learn the culture of that developer's tool chain and not necessarily even know that you're doing it.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So like they'll tell you this is how you got to walk. And when people are expecting that kind of hand-holding on the internet, because you'll see questions on Stack Overflow or Reddit like, okay, before I get going making my application, what should the folder structure look like? Nobody cares.
Mm.
Like, and go, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're asking that question, you're asking the wrong question. Like, what are you going to build? Well, I'm not sure. Well, that's your problem. Your problem isn't not knowing what folders to make. It's not knowing what to solve.
Right.
So that's, like, if you find something like, if you're really into Raspberry Pi, like, you get the hardware. Like,
I do not recommend the For Dummies books.
yeah.
I read C for Dummies, and they, towards the end, promised to get into pointers and then didn't. And pointers are an extremely important concept to C. You do not understand C at all.
Yeah.
If you don't know pointers.
Okay. And I've never bought one of those style of books.
Don't buy For
It's
Dummies.
insulting to me.
I don't know about these other ones might be fine. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it might be.
I haven't read them. But I was not impressed with the
so-
only For Dummies book I paid 50 cents for.
Have you seen a Raspberry Pi in real life before?
No.
Here's a Raspberry Pi. And it's not attached to other garbage, but the thing in the little black box is a Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
And it has got some circuitry on top of it that a ribbon cable's attached to there, which is going off to that display. And that doesn't necessarily
parts of
look like a
display.
display because you got to flip backwards.
Yeah,
That's a grid of 64 by 64 LEDs.
Mhm.
So that was a project we did a year and a half ago, something like that.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. 2019 was rough. And what we did is so do you have one of those stupid things, Christian?
Yeah, somewhere.
We,
The metric?
yeah.
It's gonna be in probably well, let me see.
I mean, it's not really critically important, but Leaf was at a trade show or something and found this
It
thing.
is.
Yeah, that black box has got something like 8 by 32 LEDs in it, so it's just a little like matrix.
Yeah.
And you can program it using a variety of tools to say stock ticker something something or the weather or whatever, right? So we were going to have it just be kind of a neat little display. And I mean, it does do that. It looks neat, but it's kind of limited, and we wanted to do some more complicated stuff. That little box was what, $250, something like
Yeah, I
that?
think it was $200 each.
You're holding $80 worth of hardware,
Nice.
and that's way higher resolution.
Yeah.
It's not just high resolution, the computer is useful.
Yeah, the computer can do stuff. And so,
I'm happy it doesn't have Wi-Fi.
oh yeah. So we took it upon ourselves to see if we could hook up these LED matrices to a Raspberry Pi and do other things. And we somewhat succeeded at doing that and got bored and got distracted. And then the Wi-Fi in the office changed and made it harder to do. And yeah, but
I was pretty happy with that anti-alias line I figured out how to make.
yeah, it was neat.
Anti-aliasing is hard. You don't realize it until you try to implement it.
So the Raspberry Pi is basically just like a $35 computer that's the size of a credit card.
Yeah.
It's an ARM processor, so it's not nearly as fast as like an Intel.
They're pretty decently fast though.
They are decently fast. I mean, it's roughly like an old iPhone kind of speed, like
Sure.
not super powerful, but good enough.
Yeah.
Do a lot with it.
Yeah, it's way better than a 30-year-old computer. And it's got you can't see them on this thing. Well, you can kind of see it. Like there's all these little copper dots.
Yeah.
Those are GPIO pins, general purpose I/O, and you can actually control them, like send voltage or signal on them, or read from them. And so like this ribbon cable is attached to this thing, which is then connected to some of these pins. I don't remember which ones. But then there's a piece of software on the Pi that I can interface. So I've got a Go program written on this thing that talks to this interface board and displays stuff on this.
Nice.
And the Go program is running a web server. The web server has a web page that you can go visit, and it gives you this 64 by 64 grid and table.
Sure.
Color picker. You just pick a color and you start drawing on it, and they just show up.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, we'll show you that sometime. But
That is very cool.
it also allows you. I built it in such a way that you can draw a picture, save that as a frame in an animation, change the picture, save another frame, another picture, save it, and you can build an animation,
Really?
and then loop that animation. And none of that,
awesome.
that's all completely in Go and HTML5 stuff.
Sure.
So
That's awesome.
it's pretty neat. So you just gotta be creative and have something you want to do.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me starting points.
You bet.
I mean, my interest is peaked at the moment. I'm very excited. So just need to make sure I'm disciplined and spend time each week learning. I mean,
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Once
Right.
you have purpose, that the discipline kind of follows when you have purpose.
Right.
So the hard part is finding the problem that you know you can solve with programming that is actually a problem that you need to solve
Okay.
and that you're the best person to solve.
Right.
So
Yeah,
That's the hard part.
it's easy to kind of bite off more than you can chew and get discouraged, and it's easy to bite off something that you're not actually interested in.
Mhm.
So you got to find something that's
I like
in the
this though. I'm glad you showed me this because seeing how they work together and
Mhm.
having something that's, so to speak, tangible
Yep.
is very fun, especially while you're learning.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, the best part is that it makes the your changes visible
Yeah.
so easily.
And it skips the whole having to set up a web server and run a Windows box or a Linux box or Mac that can respond to page requests. Like, it's all just kind of in a sandbox here.
That is very nice.
This is the one I didn't fix. Wow. That got bright fast.
Do either of you have any projects you work on in your personal lives that are pretty interesting?
You just picked up one.
Yeah, well, so I'm actually gonna be streaming it too. I'm going to build an app that I've named Squishy, which is going to be a vulnerability playground. So the first vulnerability it's going to showcase is the ability to modify the URL when you're on this single page web application, such that you change from user A to user B without being authorized to. That's the vulnerability, is it doesn't check. And being able to make a change to the web application that you're not authorized to, and then trying to cover your tracks, because there's like logging built into the thing. And then taking and flipping it, and as the developer of the application, how do you detect that someone is exploiting a vulnerability? Like, how would you even sniff that out? How does it look to the users? Like, something weird's happening, and I can't put my finger on it, right? So, how do you log and detect that something's being used inappropriately? And then how do you patch that? What do you do to fix that vulnerability?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be building that all basically soup to nuts and giving a talk at Tech Pulse, showing off the exploit and the whole life cycle of that.
That's awesome, man. Really cool.
Yeah, so I will be starting with a very basic Go web server, setting up some HTML stuff that will look something like a web interface, kind of like what you might see in ConnectWise or something. Very, very simple, stripped down, because it doesn't need to be feature packed, it just needs to do the job.
Right.
And building out enough logic that it can function in that role, and then making sure, A, that I break it appropriately, because I don't want it to not allow me to do the thing, and then capture all of that and the whole story of the exploit and all that, and then patching it, so changing the code in such a way that if you go and change the URL and change the user ID, it actually can detect that and prevent you from doing the thing.
Nice. That sounds pretty cool.
So that I'm going to be doing in my spare time. I've got some hardware hacking stuff that I want to get into. I got to set up a lab so that I've got a workspace that nobody will bother.
Yeah.
Hopefully have that in the next week or two. But I do a lot of COG was started in my spare time. That rain chart thing was started in my spare time. Just like Skunkworks, kind of my whole position here was a Skunkworks project, because we had people basically checking backup status on all of these things, and it's a manual process. You got to go into this page, you got to click on this thing, and click on that thing, and you got to wait. It might fail. You got to click it again. Now you get it, and you go, okay, that's one. I got 37 more to go, and that's 8 to 10 hours of futzing around a week. So I built a thing that automatically scraped all that data in one place and summarized it and made the painful stuff float to the top. So now it's just at a glance, I know exactly where we're at, and I just saved everybody 10 hours a week.
It's on the screens over there if you want to see it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You want to bring it up on the recording one?
No. Yeah.
That's okay. I think I've seen that over here. Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I've got a variety of other things I want to work on. I haven't had the workspace to do it in, so I've been discouraged for the last year or so. But what about you?
Trying to align two different translations of a book to they're very different translations.
Okay.
But just like sentence by sentence, so I can see the differences in how it was translated.
Okay.
So I have some scripts that just go through and break out all the sentences and paragraph ends and all that stuff, and try to realign everything correctly, which is hard because there's no you can't regex that.
Yeah, you gotta find anchor points.
Yeah. And they're annotated differently. One has all the footnotes at the bottom of every single chapter, and one has all the footnotes at the bottom of the entire book. So the footnotes numbering and it's just hard. But I've made it a lot easier.
That's interesting though. Yeah.
Yeah,
That could be pretty
that's
cool.
a thing that I wanted to do, and it's text. I can
Yeah.
manipulate text.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Well, what do you think, gentlemen? A good point to wrap it up. I respect your
Yeah.
time, and this has given me a lot to go off of for now.
It's a reasonable exit time.
Appreciate the patience and explaining things thoroughly for me. That helps
Oh, yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, and there's plenty to learn. I would hazard against the approach Jeff took. Jeff tried to, when he was learning PHP, decided to try to learn every single function and memorize them. And there's no good reason to do that in the internet age. You can look up a function and the exact parameters. All you need to know is the basics of how the language works. And if you can't do a thing with the knowledge you have in your head, you go search for it. You'll find 15 things on Stack Overflow that explain 18 different ways to do it. And you pick one and you try it and it works and you move on with life.
Okay.
We haven't explained regex.
Yeah, so this is Stack Overflow. This is a place where people come and ask a lot of programming questions.
Okay.
Like, here's some HTML. And I want to find all of these in a document, but not these, because these have a slash in them. And regular expressions are basically, it's pattern matching. So you use text to describe text patterns. And it looks really weird. It kind of makes sense when...
It's very hard to read.
Yeah, it's not at all easy to read.
Yeah.
It's easier to just try to match it against something and see what it matches.
Yeah.
Is how you figure out how these things work. But and this is kind of a translation of what he's saying is it looks for a less than, and then some of these, and then not this. It's
a reasonable little snippet of the regex, but
yeah.
there's so much variability in HTML that it is hazardous to your health to try to do this.
Okay.
And that's the point of this post.
Well, that's the point of this
And
comment.
the point of this, answer.
You should start reading this answer and
just graze over it.
My lord.
You can kind of see the descent into madness.
Of course.
Yeah. HTML is a filthy, dirty, disgusting language that allows you to get away with murder and still have things work. And so all the people out there that are writing web pages, it's just not healthy to try to scrape the web. It's a dangerous thing to do.
It's super tempting because it's text, right?
Yeah, sure.
You can read text, and if you know these regular expression things exist, you can match the patterns in the text, and there's patterns in HTML. So It seems like it's a perfectly suitable. This seems like a normal thing to do. This is a common question that probably everybody who's been programming for more than 3 years has probably tried to do this at some point.
Well, I did.
I did too. That was one of the first things I tried to do.
Yep. But this is.
And that's awesome.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
This is why.
Yeah, of course.
This post looks exactly as it was supposed to look. There are no problems with its content. For our attention.
Jeez. That's cool. So, if I wanted to try to find a way to do something, don't spend countless hours just memorizing the function or whatever it may
Use-
be I'm
use
looking
Google.
for.
Use Google.
Use Google. I have this problem. How do you solve it?
Right.
Okay.
In this language, and you'll find answers. You'll find people that have asked the same question just as poorly as you tried to ask it, and you'll find the best way to ask that question and the correct answer for that question,
Okay.
and probably multiple ways to solve it. I mean,
Unless it's Python, in which case there's one way to solve it.
yeah, the Pythonic way. Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
think having something you want to achieve is key. And if you've got a thing that you want to achieve, as long as it's not a video game, you can probably put a dent in it.
Sure.
And yeah, we're happy to help. We've had people come in and either they put it up on GitHub or what do you call it, a paste bin or something, and take a look at the code. And I couldn't get this to work, but I got this to work. And then we do some tweaks and we do a little code review.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be airing as much, if not more, dirty, gross laundry garbage on the internet by doing this and streaming it as anybody. So
Okay.
I don't think anybody should feel ashamed if their code isn't perfect. There's plenty to learn.
Yeah, fair enough.
Nobody's got it all mastered. Well, there are those that have it all mastered, but they don't work here.
Well said.
All right,
Oh, well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
you bet. Close all your tabs and see if Chrome crashes.
Why not just crash Chrome?
And kill the stream as well. That was my brother.
Ah, okay.
Just hit stop streaming in the bottom there.